For COBT viewers and listeners, it's Maynard and Mike here with something that is special in so many ways. As all of you know, this week in Houston is going to be CERAWeek. So thousands of energy execs, investors, energy curious will be coming in from all over the world. One of the feature attractions will be the new administration's energy team. And front and center in that is Chris Wright. We're so lucky because Chris Wright is a good friend. We've known him for a long time. When we think of people who have been out there talking about energy long before the rest of the world realized that all the issues and the needs, Chris was doing it. But here's where it gets super special. Chris has joined us today for a discussion. We couldn't be happier. This is the 5th anniversary, Mike. March 10th, 2020, we started COBT. So when we thought about who would we want to talk to, who would make an amazing guest, how do we properly celebrate 5 years of doing this every Tuesday, there's nobody better on the planet. So Chris, let me just stop and say, God bless you and thank you. We're so delighted to talk to you today.
Oh, thrilled to be here and congratulations on 5 years. That's fantastic staying power and a testament to how great those dialogues you've done with so many different people across the energy space. I've listened to probably the large majority of them. So it's a great achievement and congratulations.
Well, I think one of the things we want to visit with you a little bit about today is energy education and knowledge is so important to energy decision making. And really, honestly, nobody has done that better than you, Chris, and you've done it all over the globe. So how we're going to get the world thinking better about its energy choices is it's a super important topic. So thank you for all you've done.
Oh, you bet. Look, energy is what makes everything in our lives possible. It's what keeps societies together. It's what defines the possibilities of what people can achieve in their life. So I think it's just too important to take casually, or even worse, it's too important to have been hyper politicized, which is what we've seen over the last decade, where policies on energy are done. They really have nothing to do with energy, but we've just grown top-down control and tried to drive things in ways for political reasons, all justified in the name of climate change, but not justified by an objective view of climate change. So what President Trump and myself are trying to do is just bring some rationality back to this thing. Let's look at climate change rationally. Let's understand how critical energy is. Let's try to find the pathway that best improves human lives. Isn't that the goal at the end of the day?
We love it. We're with you. Well, Chris, I asked Mike, we're not doing a market update today as much as I asked Mike, give us a handful of bullet points from what's been happening in the market year to date around energy. And that's the broad spectrum of it. So Mike, let me turn to you.
Well, maybe I'll give a little bigger perspective. And, what I'd say is, we always like to talk about bonds, commodities, equities, and stuff like that. Just real quick bullet list. We have basically the 10-year bond is down about 30 basis points to about 4.3%. It's been all over the place, to be honest with you. The S&P 500 is down 2% this year. It feels very volatile. Thinking it's only down 2% is amazing to me. Technology is down about 8%. Those are big names like the NVIDIAs, stuff of that nature. Energy is actually up 2% this year. It doesn't feel like it, does it? But it is up to 2% this year. Oil service companies and E&Ps, they're down, but you're seeing some of the major oil companies, they're up. Electric utilities are up 5 to 6%. Midstream's up 5 to 6%. The power IPPs are down about 10 or 15%. Remember, those have been some of the best stocks over the last 12 to 18 months. They're down a lot here for the year. As it relates to crude oil is down probably $4 or $5, around $67. Start the year around 72, so weakness there. But the real star this year has been natural gas. Natural gas prompt is up about 20% to about $4.40 an M, and the 12-month strip is around $4.75 to $4.80 an M, and that's up about 30%. And so it's going to be really interesting to talk to Chris about what he sees on this front, because electricity, natural gas, those are the big themes this year, and hopefully we'll be able to build on that in the discussion today.
Okay, awesome. Well, Chris, I was just looking at some of the interviews you've been doing, and God bless you, you're out there. You're talking to, I saw you It doesn't matter the host. You've been willing to talk, and so that's what we need, more of that candid energy conversation. But a real theme with you has been talking about natural gas. That's a high quality fuel. The world needs more of it. We've used it to achieve both environmental and power goals. Maybe start with natural gas. You were over in Plaquemines Parish just late last week with the new LNG facility there. But maybe let's talk about natural gas just to kick it off.
Yeah, Maynard, as you probably saw in the last version of Bettering Human Lives that I wrote, we looked carefully at what's happened to the global energy system since the financial crisis. Remember, that was the original Build Back Better. We had a horrible financial crisis, economic destruction, and now we're going to try to, steer our energy, or more aggressively try to steer our energy a different system. It sort of ramped up a huge attempted change in trajectory at the energy system. And investing in new energies and innovation and trying to drive change, I'm for all of those things, done rationally and done thoughtfully. But what we tried to do was just see what actually is growing the fastest in the world as far as energy that's consumed across the whole planet. And what came out was by far and away the fastest growing energy source on the planet the last 15 years is natural gas. It's like 40% of all the growth in global energy consumption over the last 15 years has come from one source, natural gas. And that natural gas story, of course, has a great American twist to it. 15 years ago, we were the largest importer of natural gas on the planet. Maybe you got to go back 17 years ago or whatever. So we were the largest net importer. We had relatively high natural gas prices, twice as high as they are today. And when you inflation adjust, that's more than twice as they are high than they are today. And we had well over 1,000 rigs drilling furiously to produce natural gas in the US. Today, we have 100 rigs drilling, more than a 90% reduction, and we've become the largest net exporter of natural gas. So just enormous economic balance of trade, industry, home heating, everyone's huge advantage from so much more abundant natural gas, therefore so much lower cost natural gas for Americans. So even as we've turned to a big exporter, prices have actually come down, not up. That's one of the questions I get asked. Hey, if we export more natural gas, won't that hurt US consumers and businesses by driving up natural gas? And my answer there is that the history shows exactly the opposite. As we've gone to larger scale production, we just get more efficient. You build larger infrastructure. The technology has evolved. So, if we wanted to double US natural gas exports, which I believe we'll do over the next 5 or 6 years, I think we will double today's US natural gas exports. And to satisfy that additional demand, we probably got to add 15 or 16 rigs. Like, that's nothing. So I think it's great that we've had this energy technology revolution that has made natural gas cheaper, far more abundant. Number one for Americans, but number two for our allies around the world. Think of what natural gas is used for. I mean, this is the main feedstock and energy source to produce nitrogen fertilizer. Without synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, global food production drops by half. So I'll put that one in the important box. We also use natural gas for our petrochemical industry, which is also growing fast globally. Plastic, synthetic materials, heck, the clothes we're wearing, the paints behind us, that everything we construct out of comes from petrochemicals. Natural gas is key again there as an energy source and a feedstock. I'm all for staying warm in the winter. Natural gas is the largest heating fuel in the United States. And down that list, but also critically important, of course, it's by far and away the largest source of electricity in the United States. Today, at about 43% of all the electricity consumed in the United States. The last 5 years, as that percentage has grown, the answer has always been, yeah, it's about to plateau and roll over. Yeah, it's about to plateau and roll over. I'll make the maybe crazy prediction that we see it get to 50% of US electricity in the next several years. And why is that? We now are starting to see rapid demand growth in electricity. And Maynard, I'll let you chime in here, but I know we wanted to get to AI. Last 20 years, we've had well below 1% compound annual growth rate in demand for electricity. Unfortunately, in the last 4 years, we've seen well over a 20% rise in the average price of electricity, even though we've seen very little demand growth. And the materials for large production of electricity, natural gas, nuclear, and coal, the big three, the fuel cost of none of those has gone up. So why has electricity prices gone up so much? That's rightfully alarming to American citizens. And now we're about to see large demand growth. So that's a key challenge we have to solve. Deliver that demand growth so that we don't export another energy-intensive manufacturing industry, AI, where we take electricity and manufacture intelligence. We need to keep that here in the United States, which means we need to have an energy policy go in a different direction.
So Chris, one question, you just touched on it. There was so much in there, but the electricity prices, and this is something that I think we've been bumping into, particularly over the last few years, which is electricity prices really throughout the Western world have been going up. And it has had an effect on where industry chooses to locate. Just your point on AI. When you look at the electricity system in the U.S., which it's not one system, but when you think about it broadly, how do you attack? Gosh, let's bring down power prices. Like, how do you wade into that system and try to lower prices?
Yeah, so electricity is complicated. And therefore, it's been very subject to political meddling. Well, we got to put this demand in there. We got to put this demand in there. Renewable portfolio standards. We're going to tell them what to use to produce electricity. So Europe has obviously gone much further down that road. But if you politically demand a lot of intermittent, weather-dependent, low energy density energy sources, you're probably not going to get a very good result. In fact, it was clear you weren't going to get a good result, and everyone's acting surprised now that we didn't get a good result. Let me give one data point, Maynard, here. And look, I'm a Western guy, but I've moved to D.C. before inauguration, beginning of January, and inauguration day was very cold. If everyone remembers, they canceled the outdoor inauguration. That hasn't been done for 40 years. It was brutally cold. And that night, 4 or 5 a.m. on January 21 was peak demand on PJM, the 12-state utility conglomeration back here, or marketplace. Marketplace is even the wrong term, but 65 million people, 12 states on PJM at peak demand, 44%. And look, when you design an electricity grid, peak demand is the design criterion. If the electricity grid had failed, then thousands of people would have died and froze to death that night. And so you have to deliver electricity at that time. That's what you design grid capacity for. And then you want to do that reliably, stably, and as cost efficiently as you can. At that peak demand time, 44% of the electricity on PJM came from natural gas, 22% from nuclear, 22% from coal, 6% from hydro, 4% from oil. That's what you use in emergencies when you fire up old generators to do it. 2% from wind and 0% from solar. So think of those investments in wind and solar and all that. And heck, when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, you're getting electricity from those sources. But what matters is, what do they bring at peak demand? And it turned out here a combined 2%, which meant that the grid you needed to meet that demand moment was the same whether you had wind or solar or not. So you needed all the other resources to keep the lights on and heaters running and natural gas valves running for home heating. So it just shows investing heavily in something that's not there when you need it most is going to be expensive. The answer there, of course, people would say is storage. And boy, if we could store electricity, it would change the math a lot on things. But that's turned out to be very hard. Today, all the batteries in the world, take them all out of all the electric vehicles, take all the batteries we've got in the world, they can store less than 2 minutes of global power generation. So they're used paired with solar to do demand shifting from the sun in the late afternoon to peak demand after the sun goes down. And that's a valuable use. I'm all for, how can we add to the energy system? But we've gone very aggressively down a road that has not been successful. And Maynard, if I can say, This isn't just recently either. In the last 20 or so years, as our country's gotten wealthier, that's a great thing. We've just drifted into a place where we've made it easy for people to stop things and hard for people to do things, to build a transmission line, to build a pipeline, to build a large manufacturing facility. That's just very hard today. Years of protest suit, NEPA, challenges of NEPA. If you can't build something, it's hard to get a new system going. So what we've seen is over the last 20 some years, after the US, the industrial powerhouse of the world for a century, last year, we consumed about 25 exajoules of energy for manufacturing, which is by far the biggest use of energy. We talk endlessly about transportation, which is important, but that's 25% of energy consumption. 25% is businesses and buildings and homes and all those other things. But 44% of total global energy is used to make things. And without the materials and systems that you make, you can't have an internet or an electric car or an airplane. So I think you always got to look at energy as the most important thing. The root use of energy is to make materials and systems. So we consumed 25 exajoules in that area. China consumed 70. So almost 3 times more manufacturing intensive industry is done in China than in the United States. We've just outsourced our energy intensive manufacturing. I think during COVID, during the Russia-Ukraine war, people are starting to wake up to, if you have critical things, you probably don't want all of them made overseas. And now we're rushing headlong into a new energy intensive manufacturing industry, AI, which I think is going to be spectacular. We see the services it provides and the efficiencies for businesses and all that. That's the first manifestation of it. That's great. That's got a long room to run. But think of AI for drug discovery, for protein folding, for very complex molecular level calculations. AI is going to make that, and quantum computing, which will come almost in parallel, a few years behind. We're going to be able to figure out how diseases manifest at the molecular level, and therefore how to address them. This is going to be massively impactful in the next 5 to 10 years. Fusion energy, these complex plasmas and physics around that, we haven't quite cracked that code yet, but we're getting closer. I think with AI, that's probably going to knock us over the hump there, and I think you're going to see huge advancements in fusion in the next few years. So in any case, I'm very excited about AI. I think it'll be great for our country. It's also going to have big national defense implications. So this is not a technology we want dominated and made somewhere else. It will be made many of other places, but the US must lead in AI. And if we're going to lead in AI, we have to have significant growth in affordable, reliable, secure power here in the United States. We need to meet that to serve AI demand, but not meet it at the expense of consumers, that they're outbid by these data centers and electricity prices rise 20, 30, 40%. We cannot let that happen. The only answer there, of course, is more supply. And the last administration was sort of specialized in stopping the building of any new reliable supply and doing everything they can to close existing supply. So we've got to turn a 180 there, and we've got to make it easier, first, to keep open our existing power plants, and then how can we add new capacity as rapidly as possible so we can supply the electricity needed for AI and more so that we can start to put downward pressure on electricity prices, not upward pressure.
So do you find, Chris, I was thinking about the world you now live in, Washington, D.C., and you're talking to representatives, senators, policy people, et cetera. It seems like 2 or 3 things have gotten in the way of good energy policy. One has been this belief that natural gas is, quote, dirty or a transition fuel, or there's been this negativity around natural gas. That's been a problem, I would say. And then the second one has been this just instinctive belief that wind and solar, if they have marginal cost of 0 when they work, they must make things cheaper. Are you finding the discussions people are starting to come around to, hey, wait a minute, natural gas, it may have some issues, but they're solvable. And hey, wait a minute, it's just not the case that every time you add more wind and solar, it's actually not making things cheaper depending on, how it's done and where it's done. Like, how about those two thought patterns? What do you find? Are those changing?
They are, Maynard. I think, I believe and hope we hit peak crazy a couple of years ago, and people are getting more realistic, more concerned about energy. And that was driven by price rises. People in their states and their communities are upset about it. So there's a growing interest. I've had a number of great dialogues with Democratic governors, Democratic senators, that are just wanting to get realistic about energy. Hey, yeah, we did a lot of that, and energy in our state got more expensive. We can't get new businesses to locate there. We got problems. How do we get more of that low cost, reliable energy? I've had tremendous dialogues. What's been encouraging, Maynard, is, look, if you're in politics, that's a tough business. I'm new at it, but it's a tough but critically important business. Energy's complicated. You're an East Coast politician. How would you know much about energy? But I've seen an incredible open-mindedness about trying to engage, about, hey, well, and every state is different. People look for, well, what's the answer on energy? The answer is nuclear. The answer is natural gas. There's no single answer on energy. Everything has trade-offs. We have states in the United States where the number one source of electricity is oil. We have states where the number one source of electricity is hydro. We have lots of states where the largest source of electricity is coal, and even more states where the largest source of electricity is natural gas. So different states have different resources and have made different choices. But to me, the way to evaluate energy systems, whether we're doing it on a state or a country level, is how well is it doing at making people's lives better? Is it affordable for them? Is it allowing energy intensive jobs to locate in their state to drive up incomes for their people? Is it allowing them to travel and visit and do everything they want? So really, to me, the only objective scorecard to evaluate an energy system is how well is it serving the people there? And I think we're seeing broad brush dissatisfaction with that in some states and satisfaction in other states. I've had a few great meetings with the governor of Puerto Rico. Fabulous gal with a passion for energy. In fact, she ran on the energy issue. They had a hurricane there 7 years ago that really destroyed the utility system there and just wreaked havoc in a wonderful place. And they started to slowly rebuild. Congress allocated, I think, $18 billion to rebuild the utility system there and get Puerto Ricans back on their feet. The last administration decided we're going to make Puerto Rico the poster child of renewables. And so we're only going to fund renewables, wind, solar, and batteries. And so what's happened? So almost none of that money has been spent. They got 40 cents a kilowatt hour electricity, large, significant blackouts all the time. This is tragic. I think they've had 5 years of net outflow, people leaving Puerto Rico. What a gorgeous place to live. People are leaving that territory. Businesses, a huge amount of pharmaceuticals that are made in the United States are made in Puerto Rico. Those businesses are a threat. If you have expensive, unreliable power, it's hard to stay competitive. So certainly one of the missions I'm very excited on is working with that governor and to help get money flowing, rebuild that energy system, bring down the price of electricity, increase the reliability and confidence in the system. And it's very doable. Now I'm going to learn there's lots of permits and approvals to build infrastructure. So it's going to be my little case study, but it's urgent and we're going to get going quickly there.
We're excited about learning more about Puerto Rico too, because as we have been learning about it, we see these trends and decisions that you've referenced, and we want to dig in there as well. Could I just ask you one question? You mentioned certain states using oil as their primary or a significant part of their energy system, and we've talked on the merits of natural gas. One of the most fascinating parts of the energy complex in the U.S., if you will, is the Northeast, right? Because Pennsylvania transformed its economy and its energy system and really the country with the Marcellus Shale. That shale, first of all, it goes over the border into New York State, and it's not being drilled there. And then, as we all know, in the Northeast, they use a lot of fuel oil. This is not as environmentally friendly as natural gas. There's not enough pipelines in that system. So that's just an interesting little microcosm where it seems like we could be doing things a lot better. Does that one stick out to you?
Oh, it does. Now, Hawaii is the state that gets the largest source of its electricity from oil. But you're right, in New England, when it gets cold, the marginal supply of electricity, when it gets really cold, the highest use of natural gas is heating. It has to first go to satisfy home heating, which means whatever amount of natural gas you have gets diverted out of the electricity sector and into home heating. But yes, in New England and those cold spikes, oil can be up to 20% of their total electricity. That's expensive. That's generally older technology burners. That just makes no sense at all. But yes, I've talked to multiple New England governors, and God bless them, that have said, hey, this just doesn't make any sense. The governor of Connecticut, fantastic. He's like, I can't get businesses to grow and expand in my state. I've got among the most expensive electricity prices in the nation. And don't I live not far away from like the gold mine of electricity and of natural gas and low cost electricity? Absolutely. So look, there were 2 pipeline projects, in fact, more than 2 critical pipeline projects, the Constitution pipeline that goes through New York State from Pennsylvania to bring more natural gas to feed into New England, and another pipeline called Nessie, the Northeast Service Extender that would come from Pennsylvania across Jersey, under the New York Harbor and into Long Island. When that original pipeline was built, older infrastructure, think New England, think Long Island, most of the homes are heated with fuel oil. That was a great technology compared to smoky wood before. But today, natural gas is so much cheaper than heating oil, particularly delivered by a pipeline, and it burns cleaner. You get better air quality, lower cost, it's a factor of 4 cheaper. Do you want to pay $500 for your heating bill or 125? Like, everybody's signing up for the 125 plan. But that requires just building a small amount of infrastructure that was politically opposed and stopped years ago. And so now we're back into that political battle, but it's just home run for everyone involved if we can get some simple infrastructure built. If you switch, and in New England, on Long Island, home heating, you can save each household $2,300 on average by switching. And what else do you get? Cleaner air, better air quality, and meaningful reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. If that's your big issue, it's like a win on every respect. So, but it's amazing. This is when I said before, we've been a little crazy, that otherwise reasonable people have stood in the way of just basic infrastructure that deliver across the board wins. And part of it, Maynard, was I think people thought, hey, in another 10 or 15 years, we'll build more wind turbines and solar panels and batteries, and we won't need any of this stuff anymore. That's today, wind, solar, and batteries are 3% of global energy, and only just over 3% in the United States. Because they're just in the electricity sector. Now, again, I'm a solar fan. Don't get me wrong. It's not that there's not a role for solar, but to believe it's going to take over home heating and manufacturing steel and cement and fertilizer, it's not going to. That's just not in the realm of what it can do. So we've just got to be more thoughtful. We've just got to think about trade-offs, and we can't worry about scoring political points or climate points when the scorecard involves degrading the quality of life people have. The Biden administration, we had 4 years where real incomes actually declined net over that period, which means that inflation prices, nominal prices, rose faster than nominal wages. That's not positive progress. And that wasn't just, of course, mistakes in energy policy, but energy is foundational to everything else. If you get energy wrong, nothing else matters.
I think that quote right there just sums it up, Chris. That's one of my favorite quotes by you. If you get energy wrong, nothing else matters. And I think Puerto Rico is a perfect example of that. However, I also think that vision and culture is extremely important as well. And your vision and your culture at Liberty Energy was very fantastic. And so as you start to go to the DOE and you look at that organization, maybe kind of describe to us or tell us what you envision the vision being there. What is the ultimate goal there? And the organization, is the culture there for that organization to really kind of, act upon that vision?
Mike, I think the short answer is yes. Look, our message, what do we say our goal is? Our goal is to increase the supply of affordable, reliable, secure energy. Like, I don't think it's hard for people to get on board with that vision. And I think we have seen that across the board. I visited many of our national labs already, and I think they're fired up. What we want to, and labs do more than just energy. So Department of Energy is maybe our core topic, but the department does things well outside of the realm of energy. The biggest producer of Nobel Prizes in the physical sciences is the United States National Labs. So we're doing basic research on quarks, on neutrinos, on solid state physics, high energy physics, awesome advancements in chemistry and materials, some of which don't have commercial applications. And I'm fully on board with that as well. How are you going to understand how the universe works without basic research? But people at the labs, what do they want to do? They want to advance science. They want to advance innovation. When they've been told there's politically favored science and politically favored ideas, and then there's things you're not supposed to work on or talk about, that's not empowering to people. That's the opposite. So the reaction I've seen has been tremendous. There's also smothering bureaucracy on so many of the labs and the ways they can do things. So we're quickly looking at that. How can we do things more efficiently, lower cost, faster? How can we get everyone focused on science and basic science or research in biology or isotopes, all different areas, but everything to do with energy. Let's be practical about energy. Energy is to make people's lives better, to make things more possible. But Mike, actually, maybe among politicians, some of the things I say are controversial, but I think among people that work at the DOE and people that work in the national labs, that's just refreshing. It just sounds like common sense.
So Chris, one question you notably said, just picking up on this theme that you and Mike just touched on, I thought it was a great quote in your nomination hearing. You commented, "Hey, look, I'm new to government, right? I don't know exactly what levers I can throw. So I hear you and I'm on it." And so it was a great, just factual and thoughtful comment. Now you have been in it for a while. What are you learning about affecting change, working through the bureaucracy, working with the other departments? You and Doug Burgum seem to have a great partnership. Everybody knows energy is it's not just in the Department of Energy, it's across a lot of verticals. What's your assessment of the ability to work across all that to get this change done?
It's still early on, Maynard, but there's a number of just great people. The cabinet is energized people who dropped whatever else they were doing in life and are kind of all in. Hey, look, America elected President Trump and this administration to bring back some common sense. Let's look at barriers that just don't make any sense. Everybody in our world today, particularly in the United States, a wealthy country like the United States, wants clean air and clean water. We love seeing the return of big mammals across the country. So it's not a business versus environment. And again, I've always said I'm not pro-business, I'm pro-consumer. I want consumers to have more choice and businesses to compete to bring better products and drive costs lower. But we've just got to get bureaucratic barriers out of the way. But there's an interest in that across the board. So I think even in the first half of this year, you're going to see significant progress in that area. But think of a lot of it. Like there's a lot of learning going on. I've not been working inside of government, but of course there's a lot of people here that have. I've hired, a lot of those people. And so we've got to take our expertise to find out what are the most impactful things we can do in the shortest possible time frame. But you can't do everything. It's been built up over decades and decades. We're not going to snap our fingers and fix it. And also politics, the most important, the lasting changes go through the Congress. So they've got to be voted in the Senate. They've got to be voted in the House. And something I knew before, but I'm really feeling right now is politics is the art of the possible. Like I could design, here's the 10 changes I want to make to energy policy that I think do all the right things. Well, I'm not going to get all 10 of those. There's political, once you start putting things in place, government systems, government ways, they become sticky. Government's a little bit like a ratchet. You can stop going in a crazy direction, but it's harder to go backwards. I think we're trying to build consensus on some of the biggest changes we can make, where we're going to remove things that have been done that have been destructive. But my list of the things I'd like to remove is certainly much longer than the list of things we'll actually remove. But if we can get the biggest ones and get some momentum on that, I think we can continue down that pathway. But yeah, Maynard, it is a very different business. I am coming up to speed and learning as fast as I can, but it's exciting. It's hugely impactful. I was shocked at how many people called me up when my nomination was announced and said, I'll drop what I'm doing and come join the team. If you got a spot for me, I'm in. The head of IBM Research, this guy is a pioneer in quantum computing and next generation computing, leading to enabling AI, rising star. Put me in, and Dario Gil, he'll be Undersecretary for Science. But I could, the former head of FERC, who's very passionate about electricity markets and how they work and what the problems have been. He now has been the head of an energy practice at a major law firm. I'm in, and he's coming. Now I've got to get these people through the Senate. So the team, some stars from the oil and gas industry, mid-career, boy, if I can be helpful, I'm in. And so that is heartwarming, Maynard. People care about this country a lot, and people are willing to sacrifice, uproot their lives, dramatically cut their compensation, and work in a very different realm that isn't from the outside attractive because they care. And that's actually hugely heartening. People love this country, and they're willing to sacrifice a lot for it.
Maybe I could just ask you, Chris, another theme. This is a slight departure, but you referenced it. You said if you get energy wrong, nothing else matters. And one place that does seem to be getting energy wrong is Europe. There was a message, Jim Ratcliffe, the INEOS CEO, put out a letter where he said, we are destroying ourselves. We're destroying the chemical industry. We've had similar messages from other European business leaders. Are you starting to engage with European leaders at any level around their choices? Because they're our security historical alliance, and if they're weak, we're weaker. How do we get Europe to stop doing what it's doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. They've gone the furthest down the road, so it's the clearest data on this pathway. United Kingdom used to brag about their 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Now I think they're realizing the cost of that was pretty disastrous. And quick on that, their 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, over 2/3 of that reduction came simply from less energy consumption in the United Kingdom. The stuff they used to make there that Jim Ratcliffe talks about so articulately, they used to make it in a natural gas powered factory in the Midlands of England. Now it's made in a coal-fired factory in Asia and loaded on a diesel-powered ship that drives back to England and loaded on a diesel-powered truck and delivered to the same place. And you call that green or climate friendly? What I say to the Europeans, people sometimes say, well, we're going to be leading. We're going to show the rest of the world. Well, the rest of the world is not going to commit economic suicide. They're not going to follow a pathway that lowers the standard of living of their population, disproportionately skewed to lower income people, and just exports energy intensive jobs. That's not the model for the future. The model for the future, the way we'll get to decarbonization eventually, is going to be with energy technologies that are just as good, that are affordable, reliable, and better on all marks. And we've been slowly moving there from wood to coal to oil to natural gas and to nuclear. I won't go into it because it takes too long, but I'm super passionate about nuclear. That is one thing that market forces themselves will not be enough. It's going to take a little bit of a nudge, both regulatory changes and some economically aligned incentives to get the nuclear ball rolling. But there's a lot of businesses interested in that. That's not going to, solve our electricity problems in the next 5 or 10 years. But that is can be and affordable, is reliable, is energy dense, and can go to scale. So that's a long, medium to long-term project, but can be huge upside in that. And that's what government and planning has to be, looking ahead. But immediately, we have short-term needs of high energy prices and rising demand for electricity. And we started with this LNG exports. That's just a great story that benefits American jobs. One thing that most of the foreign leaders I've met with so far, Maynard, are from Asia, and also from Africa. Those places, like their future depends on increased supply of energy, and what better place to get more energy from than your allies and your partners, not hostile nations or nations looking to control you or get leverage over you. Boy, I spoke at the African Empowering Africa Forum a couple days ago. It was just awesome. You know, energy ministers from all across Africa, business folks from all across Africa. And I think they were just heartened by sobriety. Africa's got awesome coal resources. Europe and the United States got launched on our better way of life by using coal for electricity. It's the largest global source of electricity today. It has been for 100 years, and it will be for decades to come. That's independent of policy. That's just fact. But when we pretend like that's not so, and they're trying to make agreements to close coal plants in South Africa and prevent the rest of Africa from building coal plants to get to electrify their citizens, half of which don't have any access to electricity, and the large majority that don't have access to clean cooking fuels. That's just sinister. That's why I'm saying we've just gotten off the rails. We got to come back to common sense and come back to a focus on humans. And that's it. I'll wrap it there, Maynard. That's in a nutshell. Congratulations on what you guys have done over the last 5 years. Looking forward to seeing everyone at CERAWeek. But energy matters. It's the enabler of everything in our world. Let's be smart and thoughtful about it. Let's try to lift up people through more energy, through better energy, through more affordable energy.
Well, Chris, I know everybody in Houston and everybody attending CERA is excited to hear your thoughts. It'll be a great chance for you. It's kind of a coming out party for the Trump administration's energy policy. Can I ask you to throw in one last thing as we wrap up? Because if people haven't seen Bettering Human Lives, we always tell them, if you want to understand how Chris Wright thinks, you should go look at the Bettering Human Lives report. And one thing that's in there is your commitment to climate and the environment and thoughtfulness around climate. Would you mind just touching on that? Because I think it's important that people understand your views there.
Yes, look, the consumption of mostly driven by the consumption of fossil fuels, we've raised atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide by about 50%. It absorbs infrared radiation. That contributes to warming, and that is certainly adding to the gradual warming we've seen over the last 100 years, particularly over the last 60, 70, 80 years, where human increases in carbon dioxide have been meaningful. The warming started before that, but absolutely increased greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Methane is there too. Lead to warming of the planet. It is a real issue. It's contributing to an increase in the rate of sea level rise, although it has not accelerated over the last few decades, fortunately, little over an inch a decade. So this is a real phenomenon, but I think it's important enough that it's worth people's effort to learn the basics about it. It's real. It's a hard problem to solve. I think we will sort it out and, of course, solve it. But we're not going to by 2050, just zero chance of that happening. And to look like you're fighting to do it by 2050 just by making your products more expensive or advocating for more expensive energy policies. If you do the math, and there's a lot of climate economics work, if you do the math, you're spending $1 and getting a dime or a nickel of benefit. That's not ambitious. That's not something aspirational. That's just impoverishment. We need to be thoughtful and sober about climate change. The ways to drive down emissions that have moved the needle so far has mostly been the growth of natural gas. But it does not mean the end of coal. If you go from burning wood to burning coal, that's decarbonization in a significant level as well. So in any case, I think it's important to be thoughtful and understanding about climate change. It's real, but let's do trade-offs where the benefits are greater than the costs. And yeah, Maynard, as you mentioned, look, I've been a longtime board member of an environmental group, a free market environmental group based in Bozeman, Montana, trying to get property rights and incentives to drive better environmental outcomes. I'm a climber, an outdoor adventurer. I'm passionate about the environment, as a lot of Americans are. That's not a difference between Democrats or Republicans and left and right. We all want those ends. The question is, what are the most effective human-focused ways to achieve those ends? And I'll continue on that passion.
Well, look, thank you so much. Mike and I loved it. We knew we would. And as our community can help you, Chris, you need information, you want perspective, you want a connection to whatever it is, anything we at Veriton and those that we know can be of service to you, we would love to be. Your mission is so important, and we're so pleased that you're there. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Look, it's an honor to serve my country. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be here. I've loved the outpouring of support and help. And look, the best thing all of us can do, I think the big change we need in the energy climate world is just be honest. Just don't say what you think people want to hear. They'll be happy if I say this. We're all going to learn together. We don't know the answers to everything, but let's just be open and intellectually honest. I think that would be hugely productive if that comes into fashion in the energy and climate world instead of being political.
That's so awesome. So many times on this show, someone has said after the camera goes off, well, I would never say this in public, but. So we're
That's
like,
what we got to change, Maynard.
Say it in public. Say it in public.
Exactly. That is my goal. Let's just all be. It's got to be fashionable to just be honest about this stuff anyway. And I think I think we're already seeing progress in that area. I saw Wells Fargo getting rid of their net zero 2050 goal. That just warmed my heart. We need to see a cavalcade of that, of people just being realistic, honest, focused on humans and positive outcomes, not on saying what you think politically people want to hear. Take care, Maynard. Take care.
Thank you, Chris. See you soon. Bye, everybody.